All right. Appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for being here at our extraordinary session, Civil Justice Full Committee. Madam Clerk, if you go ahead and take the roll.
Representatives Bricken, Bulso, Capley, Eldridge, Gant, Garrett, Grills, Harris, Hill, Lambert, Littleton, Parkinson, Powell, Russell, Stevens, Todd, Vice Chairman Jernigan, Chairman Farmer. Mr.
Right.
Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. Before I let members have any recognitions or anything, I just want to address the crowd for a minute. Thank you for being here. We know that you've taken the time out of your day to be here, and we respect that. I'm not going to ask that all I ask about signs is this: just don't block the view of the person behind you, because they've taken the time out of their day to be here too. So I think if we can just move forward in a respectful manner, the last thing I want to do is have to ask somebody to be removed from this room. Don't want to do that. I want everybody to be here, stay here, be kind, be respectful to your neighbor, and we won't have a problem at all. The only thing I do see that may be an issue is our folks that are standing. The fire marshal has said that we need to have that cleared. So if you are standing, unfortunately, I am going to have to ask you to step outside, and we've got a TV out there, and you can see this live streaming. So if you could do that. If the seat opens up, you can come in.
Numbers can sit up here?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And that is only due to the fire marshal's request. So if something were to happen to somebody, then if we had an emergency, we wouldn't be able to get out of here. Okay, and thank you for that. Members, before we get started, today's calendar, does anybody have any recognitions or anything they'd like to say? Okay. Representative Powell, you recognize, sir.
Is this personal orders?
It is.
Mr. Chairman, I think the member and the chair of this Civil Justice Subcommittee owes the public and the people of Tennessee an apology for the way they were treated yesterday. That has no place in this building. And to turn a school shooting tragedy into a travesty of democracy and the First Amendment is shameful. And I would ask that member to share with many of these people who are in our audience today, who couldn't be here and who are watching, to express that apology and make sure that never happens again. That never happens again in this building. I warned about this on Monday when we passed these rules. And look what this has led us to. Shame on us. I believe in the value of freedom, democracy, and justice. This is the Civil Justice Committee. And if we can't let Tennesseans gather in front of us peacefully and share their views, then what are we doing here as a subcommittee? I respect my colleague, and I would ask him and implore him to please offer an apology for what transpired yesterday.
And thank you for that, Representative Powell. And if you weren't here earlier, as I said to every individual sitting here, that they are more than welcome here. We want them here. We want them to be able to stay here. But in order for us as individuals and people and citizens of the state of Tennessee and the United States of America, people have to show some respect when people are talking so they can have their opinions and expressions viewed by others. So, I mean, and I apologize to folks who felt offended yesterday about what happened, but unfortunately it did. There's nothing we can do about it, but we don't want it to happen again.
Mr. Chairman, my name was called. There were victims whose children died and whose children were there present during Covenant, who I saw. I was not there. It's a good thing I wasn't there. Let me be clear. It's a good thing I wasn't there, because it would have gone down a lot different yesterday. And I can't believe my name was called, and this is a personal order. But I want to.
Yeah, I think
this isn't a speech. I'm asked for an apology. I'm giving that member a chance. If that's not going to happen, then so be it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Next. Anybody else want to recognize before we start? We've got work to do. All right. Item 1, House Bill 7072 by Chairman Russell. You got a motion? Got a second? You're probably recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 7072 officially directs the Administrative Office of Court to develop a new software system that will provide document management, electronic case filing, electronic payment methods, data reporting, and any other things that are needed to update the 20-year-old system that they're currently using. This past budget included $75 million to replace the court filing system that's way out of date. With that, I renew my motion.
Very good. Members, do you have any questions for Chairman Russell? Any questions for Chairman Russell? Seeing none, we ready to vote? Sorry. Representative Powell, you recognize.
Is there anything in this bill that restricts the public's ability to speak?
No, there's not.
There's not.
There's not there. So that's, you know that. All right, members, we ready to vote? Looks like we are. All those in favor of sending House Bill 7072 to county rules, say aye. All opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Bill moves on. Brings us to item 2, House Bill 7003 by Leader Lambert. Got a motion and second, sir. Looks like I've got an amendment coded 009549. Is that something you'd like to move forward with?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Members, I have a motion and a second. Got a motion, got a second on the amendment. You're properly recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this amendment allows for someone who has been pardoned or has had their rights restored to be able to go back and request that the decision on lifetime order protection be revisited. This came from my conversation with a member of this committee that felt like if someone does get their rights restored, then they should have at least an opportunity to get their full rights restored.
Fair enough. And we need to adopt that amendment. We have any questions on the amendment? Questions on the amendment? Members? Representative Powell, you recognize, sir.
Sorry, this is a policy-based question. When you're saying rights restored, when I look in the amendment here, it allows this person who is a stalker or who has committed something very offensive or egregious to be able to come back and obtain a gun and keep a gun. Is that what the amendment does? Because I'm just looking here, it says it allows them possession of firearm. It allows them to petition the court for relief from prohibition on purchasing or possessing a firearm.
Leader
Can you
Lambert,
speak to that?
Leader Lambert, you recognize.
I'll be glad to. So when an individual is convicted within the criminal justice system, there are times that they have an opportunity later on to get that conviction expunged. This body has passed opportunities for redemption for individuals. Both Republicans and Democrats have voted for those bills. So if someone has their record expunged, it is based on the principle that that is erased as if it never occurred. What this bill would do, if this amendment goes on, is that for those that are convicted of aggravated stalking, we would be passing a bill that provides for the victim, the survivor of that stalking, to get a lifetime order protection. That exists in a couple other sections of the code with family members of victims of murder, with family members and survivors of other violent crimes. And we allow for them to get a lifetime order protection. We passed that collectively a couple of years ago after Nikki Gozier came to me. Her husband was killed right in front of her, just less than a mile from where we sit right now. And the person that killed her husband was still sending her letters and cards from prison to continue to harass her and torment her. It was horrible. And under the previous law, Nikki would have had to have gone and got an order protection every single year. That evil person would have got an opportunity to come to court, and she would have had to look at him every single year. If someone is convicted of aggravated stalking, I don't think the victim of that crime should have to look at that person every year. I think they should have an opportunity to get a lifetime order protection. If for some reason that aggravated stalking is later expunged, pardoned, or that person has gone to court and gotten their rights restored, then I'm not going to stand in the way of someone's civil liberties with a lifetime order protection that didn't exist previously. Because previously you would have to go every single year to get that order protection renewed. So this allows at least for a judge to look at it again. If the underlying conviction, which we are allowing for the extraordinary relief of a lifetime order protection, if the underlying conviction no longer exists that it was based upon, then the person can at least petition to go to the court and have a judge look at it again.
And thank you for that explanation. It's very detailed. Any other questions? Representative Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What length of time would have to expire before that expungement from the time the crime was committed to the time the expungement takes place? What is What is that time frame?
Leader Lambert?
So if it is a pardon, then it could be a very short amount of time. That's up to a governor, but at least with this particular governor, that process can take years. It goes through the parole board, it goes through a process. I cannot tell you exactly how long that process would take. For most of these type of crimes, they're not going to be expungible through the regular process. But there are times in court when at some point afterwards, something may have gone on with the case where it could be expunged. But there's not a specific time frame I can tell you, but I can assure you that it's going to be years.
Sounds good. Representative Gant, you recognize?
Could the victim still be at risk?
Leader Lambert?
So that is what this allows for it to go in front of a judge, but it is not automatic by any means. The conviction itself creates, if the victim or survivor chooses to have a lifetime order protection, then the only evaluation that a judge is making if we create this lifetime order protection is, was that person convicted of aggravated stalking? If the answer is yes, then the individual requesting it is granted that lifetime order protection. So what this provides for is, again, if that conviction is no longer valid, then the person that lifetime order protection is against has the ability to go to court and to have the judge look at it. The judge could very well say, nope, we're going to leave it right in place. If for some reason that individual is still in danger, or simply requested and the judge agrees with it, but we're just putting back into the judge so that they have the discretion to reevaluate that if the underlying conviction is no longer there.
Members, any additional questions? All right, we're on the amendment. All those in favor, without objection, all those in favor of adopting House Amendment 009549, say aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. If you're a no and you want to have that recorded by the clerk, go see the clerk. And now we're back on the bill as amended. Any questions? Representative Hill, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to thank the leader for working on this issue. He has been working on this for years, as he mentioned, and also being willing to amend the legislation, which we just adopted, that keeps victims' rights at the forefront. And so I'm in full support. And leader, just thank you for being willing to do this and to continue to make this law better and better and better. So thank you, leader.
Very good. Next list, I had Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Representative Hill, thank you for that. I know we've served together for many years. Glad to have you back. This has been a long time journey, and I want to thank Nikki Gozer again publicly for bringing this to me. I mean, it's just, there are many folks here that are advocating for a variety of bills today, but this is one that I hope we can come together as Republicans and Democrats to just simply support survivors of violent crime. If someone has been convicted of aggravated stalking, the individual that has been convicted of that should never be around that victim again. And this allows for that to happen in a lifetime order protection.
Representative Harris, did I see your hand? You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. And so, Leader, I know we heard this morning the potential of a committee opening on the Senate side. Will the Senate be opening back up for this bill specifically?
Leader Lambert, you're recognized, sir.
So ordinarily, I would not reference what's happening in the other chamber, but I appreciate the question. So there are 37 bills that are still moving through the House. Many of you that are here today, and thank you again for being here, are advocating for several of those bills. Those bills are sponsored by members of the House. And as far as I'm concerned, every single one of those bills should continue moving forward. There are apparently only 3 that I've been told by someone in the Senate that someone somewhere decided that only 3 would move forward there. In my humble opinion, that is not acceptable. And so I'm going to continue to advocate for both this bill and all of the other bills that we'll be discussing in this committee and every other committee to pass both chambers and be signed by the governor. Those are good bills. Now, I can't tell you that all of them will make it through our committee process or theirs, but I'm going to continue to advocate for the bills that are moving through our process to be passed in both chambers.
Representative Harris, did that answer your question?
That did answer my question. The only issue or response that I had is that for future, because that has happened over here now, to where the Senate has now closed down and said we're going to lay something on the table, that just because a bill comes before us, that we don't just lay it on the table just because on our end. So that's my only thing. Thank you.
We're here to work, Representative Harris, and that's what we're going to do. Members, any additional questions? Any objection to the question? Seeing none, looks like we're ready to vote. Send House Bill 7003 as amended to calendar and rules. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. That brings us to item number 3, members. House Bill 7012. by Chairman White. There you are, sir. You've got a motion and a second. You're properly recognized. Look like you also have an amendment, 009541. Does that rewrite the bill?
That it does, correct. Mhm.
You want to go ahead and
Yes, and it's a simple
if I can
amendment.
get a motion and a second on that amendment, members? So you got a motion and a second. You're properly recognized.
I can tell you, may go ahead, go through the bill as it rewrites it at this time.
If this amendment rewrites the bill, we can go ahead and hear it, and then effectually we'll we
Okay.
can vote on the amendment and then the
The
bill.
committee where this bill came from is during the summer, we worked with the administration on a few things, and this one deals with safe gun storage, mainly in our vehicles and such. And so what it says, item number one, the Department of Safety shall provide free firearm locks to a Tennessee resident upon the resident's request. There'll be money put in the budget for that. Department of Safety shall promptly display on the department's website instructions for requesting a free firearm lock. Item number two of this bill, the Department of Safety shall collaborate with TBI and other state agencies that they deem appropriate to create a public safety or PSA campaign dedicated to firearm storage. Item three in the bill is all department approved handgun safety courses shall include instruction on safe storage of firearms. Where the amendment came in yesterday, it also said, we added back in there, any previously approved language would also be grandfathered in. So that was all the amendment did when it rewrote the bill. And at last there is an exempt tax imposed by this chapter for the retail sale of firearm safes and firearm safety devices. So no tax on those devices. And that's basically what this bill is bring attention to, a safe storage of our firearms in our vehicles, boats, and things of that nature.
And thank you for that explanation. Members, any questions on the amendment? Chairman Todd, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And thank you for the sentiment behind this bill. I think it's very important that we educate the public and encourage them to safely store firearms. And obviously, any kind of enhancement we can do to the safety courses, I think is beneficial. However, I'm not in favor of us spending taxpayer dollars to provide devices to individuals in the private sector. I don't think that's part of the government's role to do handouts like that. And likewise, I've been very much in favor of any kind of tax cuts that we can do on an annual basis, not recurring basis, but an annual basis related to surplus money that we have. So in the last few years, we've had a couple of years where we provided tax-free holidays for a whole year for gun safety devices and safes, and been all in favor of that because that's surplus money that I wanted to see returned to the people. It's their money. We should return it to the people. But providing that long-term, to say that we're going to take the sales tax off of certain things in society is a concern of mine related to just, again, our general revenue. That's our sales tax is, one of our biggest revenue drivers. It's how our tax system is structured in the state and what makes it, I think, partially attractive to people moving into the state. So for those reasons, I would be opposed to this just from that standpoint of this. It's using taxpayer dollars to provide something that individuals should be providing for themselves. But thank you, sir.
And thank you for that. Any additional questions, any response from the sponsor?
Yeah, and I do understand your statement. I just think we're at an important time in our state where since we're in special session, where we can make a statement that we are going to provide these right now. The next legislative session in 2020, or 25, they can always change things. But I just think it's important right now that we emphasize the safe storage of firearms when you're out in public, because it is a problem across our state.
And thank you for that. All right, Representative Harris, you recognize, sir.
Yeah, I think that we spend so much money on so many different things across the state. For us to say that we can't spend a bit of our money to make sure that we all got free locks. But my question was for the sponsor is, will, outside of the campaign, the safety campaign, what other avenues will people get to know that this is available for them to be able to get these free locks?
Chairman White.
Well, hopefully, we're all from Memphis, and we have our county commission and our county governments also putting this out for our local community with gun locks and things. I just think through the campaign that this is mainly where it is, and we just got to keep pumping it out so that the people know. But that in this bill, this is the main way, and I think each county on their own needs to advocate this also.
Any additional questions?
How much funding did we actually put towards making sure that campaign got put out?
Chairman White?
Let's see if we have a fiscal note on this. May have to ask legal if they have that. Here we go. No, did not get a fiscal note with it. Does legal have an answer?
Representative Gant, did you have a? Okay, no, you're on the list, okay. We had the note on the bill as filed, as I understand it.
Can we ask the Department of Safety? They might.
1 million. Leader Lambert, you recognize.
So the original note, the amendment should not change the original fiscal note at all.
And what was that amount?
So, I mean, it decreases, and this is on, specifically on, again, House Bill 7012. And what it goes to in the fiscal note, it decreases state revenue by about $1.5 million a year, increases state expenditures about $7,500 a year, and decreases local revenue by about the same. The vast majority of that is on the tax incentive there for folks to purchase gun safes. And just while I have a microphone for a second, I will address that comment that was made by one of our colleagues, which is a very valid comment. We do not need to tie the hands of future legislatures, but this does not. I mean, we make a budget that is a one-year budget at a time, and that if for some reason next year or the legislature, in the next General Assembly wishes to remove this as an incentive for folks to purchase safes, gun safes, then they clearly could. And so it is not binding future legislatures. We literally can't do that. But if you look at the fiscal note members on the original bill, that's simply what it cost. I mean, it is a small cost, in my opinion, as was said earlier, to incentivize folks to purchase gun safes, both for their vehicles, their homes, and to have free gun locks that are available to them. And I personally will encourage folks to do that. If you haven't seen also the advertisements that are up, there are, different stores, the TSC, others run advertisements for their gun safe saying, hey, they're tax free. And so the private industry out there actually helps us out with this while we've had this in place for the last couple of years. And we've definitely seen the numbers go up. So I think that's a good thing. But that's basically what the fiscal note is both the state and local revenue on primarily the tax incentives.
Very good. And thank you for that. Any follow-up there to answer your question?
Yeah, sponsor, for you personally, do you think that the firearm locks what will they do to help prevent gun crimes in the future, especially for an area like the one we both live in?
Right. Well, one thing it will do, you remember the case, I believe it was in Memphis a few weeks back, where the father jumped out of his car, left his gun in the seat, went in the 7-Eleven, and his 3-year-old picked it up and shot himself. I think things like that, we need to think before we get out of our cars and things like that. That's just little things like that. So I think that, and by the way, I found in here an allotment of $1 million for the PSA campaign will be outlined in the budget for this PSA. I found that, but you still got to get people to do it. As you know, I've carried a gun safety bill for 4 years, and it's in working with everyone, trying to come up with something that we can get through to at least do something is where we are. But it will help, if nothing else, make you think twice. Just like don't get out of the car when it's 100 degrees and leave your child in the back seat. Same thing.
And thank you for that. Representative Bricken, you're next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine's just a kind of an operational question. In reading the amendment, it's not clear to me who determines what a firearm safety device, who makes that determination for the exemption from the sales tax. So can you clarify that?
Chairman White?
Yes. And I don't know if they're on the list or not, the Department of Safety or anyone that has that at this point, that we could get into that. But there are rules as far as what kind of device would be acceptable that the state's going to issue. I don't have that information in front of me right now. If Chairman, if the DO department is in here and they're on the list, we can maybe get them to answer that.
Chairman Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 5 of the amendment, B, 1 and 2 there explains those in the amendment there, Chairman Rickon.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Bricken,
I'm reading it, but it doesn't say which department or I mean, is there, the Department of Public Safety will make a list of acceptable firearm safety devices?
Representative Bricken and Chairman Grills, I do have Department of Safety on the list, and they're back there, and it looks like they're willing to step up here. So members, without objection, you want to go out of session and hear about this? Any objection? Seeing none. All right, we're out of session. And I appreciate you all coming up. If you would just, whoever's going to address the committee, just as per normal rules, just introduce yourself, be sure your red light's on, and I'll probably let Representative Bricken rephrase or re-ask the question to the.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If this legislation passed, are y'all the department that makes the determination of what an acceptable firearm safety device is for retailers to know that it would be exempt from the sales tax?
Elizabeth Stroker, Department of Safety. I'll turn it over to Logan, but as Representative Grills said, it states in there the definition of what is the device. And so Department of Revenue is the one who comes up with that definition, and I'll let Logan chime in on that.
Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Chairman. Logan Hess, Legislative Director for the Department of Revenue. So the definition for a firearm safety device is defined in the bill there. So when those types of items are purchased, they would just be tax exempt. I mean, it is defined in the bill as to what a firearm safety device is. So I guess I'm misunderstanding the question. I apologize, sir.
Well, I just didn't know if there was actually a manufacturer's list of safety devices that retailers knew that when they put these devices for sale, that it qualified for an exemption. It seems like, I mean.
I don't know if there's a manufacturer's list.
Okay, all right. Members, any other questions for any of the individuals we have while we're out of session? All right, seeing none. All right, without objection, we'll go back in session. President Parkinson, did you have something for out of session or in session? Which one?
For out of session.
Okay, members, sorry. Without objection, we'll go back out of session. Representative Parkinson.
Thank you. Ms. Stroker, do we know how many children in Tennessee have been killed by guns?
All right. Now, Representative Parkinson, we brought him up here for a question on this bill. I think we were talking about manufacturing lists of what, so the retailers could have that.
This is about the bill. This is about the bill. It's about the bill.
Without objection, we're going to go back in session. Thank you all. All right. Questions on the amendment? Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, without objection, we're going to vote to adopt House Amendment 9541 to House Bill 7012. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Now we're back on the bill as amended. Members, have any questions on the bill? I'll entertain questions on the bill. Representative Parkinson, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman White, thank you for bringing the bill. Appreciate it. Do we know how many children have been killed by guns in the state of Tennessee?
The only figure I can give you is too many. I don't have the amount, but too many.
Mr.
All right,
Chairman.
next on my list, I have Representative
Chairman.
Powell. You recognize, sir.
Point of order.
You had your question.
Point of
Representative
order.
Powell, you recognize.
Point of order.
What's your
Point of order.
What is it?
Can I ask a follow-up question, number one? Second point of order is, I was going to ask you, can we go out of session so I can get the answer to that question? So is this what we're going to do in the committee? Now, me and you, normally, we're great together, but this, come on. I'm asking legitimate questions.
Okay, I understand. I'll put you back on the list. Put Representative Parkinson back on the list. Representative Powell, you recognize.
I was just going to say, I appreciate you bringing the bill, and I think clearly we're going through a public safety and health crisis with guns and gun violence. And so it is very, very important for us to spend tax dollars. Unfortunately, we're having to be in the situation to spend those dollars. but I think the safety of the public requires it to protect Tennesseans. And so if that's not money, the tax dollars that we should be directed to save lives and protect lives, then what is? So thank you for bringing this bill.
And thank you for those comments. Next one, we'll have Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the gentleman from Shelby County that asked the question. The child fatality report is put out on a regular basis from the Department of Health. I requested that last week. It is available for any member to review, and I agree with Chairman White's assertion that too many is the answer. I will tell you that at least due to this report, and I had it handy here for the special session and reviewed it at length beforehand. And members, if you have not reviewed it, I would highly recommend that you do so. There were 67 children in 2021 that were killed via homicide. There were just about as many that committed suicide. There are many, many children that died in vehicular-related crashes. This report lays it all out. It is from the Department of Health, and I requested that report. I'm not real sure what I said that drew objection from the crowd, but I am trying to read from the report. It is the 2023 Child Fatality Annual Report. And
Let's be respectful to one another. It's all I asked at the beginning of the committee. Just be respectful. And I'd ask you all just to also be respectful to the folks that are with you. And some of y'all can't even do that. So just, come on. Let's act like adults so we can have a conversation. Leader Lambert is trying to let you all know what's the facts. Go ahead, Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I am not trying to make a point here one way or the other. I am literally trying to read from the report and point both my colleagues and anyone else that is interested in actually reading this report and trying to use the information contained within it to help us make good policy decisions so that we can prevent these children from being killed, either via suicide, homicide, or any other way. So that is a report that is available for anybody that would like to pull it up. I would encourage folks to do so. It is extremely helpful. Thank you.
And with that said, Representative Parkinson, I'm going to go back to you, sir, and apologize if I offended you in any way. We've always gotten along really well. Did that answer your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, it didn't. I got the answer here, though. It was sent to me. In an average year, 128 children and teens die by guns in Tennessee in an average year. And firearms are the leading cause of death among children and teens ages 1 through 19, the leading cause of death. And I'm saying that, and I think it's important to note that statistic, Mr. Chairman, because this validates why your bill is so important. Not only that, I want to point out also, we've given away billions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to these corporate leeches and corporate welfare folks. And for us to spend $1.5 million, it pales in comparison for the millions and billions of dollars that we've given to people or to these corporate entities. And so to you, I say thank you for bringing this bill. You know, $1.5 million of the people getting their money back. The people getting their money back is needed and absolutely necessary if it's going to save one child's life. So again, thank you so much for bringing the legislation.
Representative Gann, I have you next on the list. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Help me understand a little bit more about the promotional campaign of safe storage of firearms. And first of all, are there any penalties in the law under this? Does this create any penalties for somebody that would store a gun unsafely?
Chairman White, you recognize, sir.
Thank you for the question. In this bill, it does not. That would be outside the scope of how we were called here. We could not put any language like that. There are no penalties. It's more of a campaign to bring attention to the citizens of Tennessee that firearm safety storage is important. And so through PSA campaigns, gun locks and things like that, but no penalties.
Very good. Representative Gann, any follow-up? You're recognized.
So who will administer the PR campaign? Is that Department of Safety?
Chairman White?
Yeah, it's going to be in coordination with the Department of Safety and TBI and any other department they may deem that they want to bring in.
Okay. Mr. Chairman,
Can I answer your question?
One
You're
more,
recognized.
I'm sorry. So can you help me understand what that campaign looks like? You know, is it going to be TV? Is it going to be newspaper or what, social media? What is it?
Chairman White.
It is my understanding, and I'm sorry I don't have all the answers. A lot of times you assume something is pretty simple and it's not. But no, they will pull that. They have had some in the past, but the Department of Safety and TBI, they will be working on that and pulling those campaigns together. So I would assume they're in the course that if this bill passes, that they would get together and write that and produce those PSAs.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. That's all I have on the list. Are we ready to vote? Any objection? Seeing none, looks like they're ready to vote to send House Bill 7012 as amended to Finance, Ways and Means. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Bill moves
Chairman
on.
and committee, thank you very much for listening to me.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. Okay. Next, our next item 4, House Bill 7054 by Chairman Faison. You got a motion, you got a second, sir, and you're properly recognized. I don't see any amendments, so you're free to present your bill.
Good morning, members. Mr. Chairman, good to be with y'all this morning. In keeping with the theme of the last bill you just heard, safety is of utmost importance. All of us should put a premium on it. After Covenant happened, I spent some time talking with the Department of Safety, and they shared with me that close to 10,000 guns were stolen out of cars in public parking spots in Tennessee over the last 2 years. That's rough. Department of Safety talked with me about the smash and grab. There's gang-related activities. People are just really messed up that they're not interested in stealing anything out of your car. They'll literally leave gold watches. They'll leave cash. They'll leave jewelry. And their whole effort is to just grab a firearm. That's the first crime that's committed. Who knows how many countless crimes are committed with that firearm that they just did right there. When you realize that there's close to 10,000 guns that were illegally obtained, I started to think it would be incumbent on us, if you do leave your car in public, to do something to secure it. I know it's problematic to criminalize somebody who's been victimized. I get that argument. So I started looking at other ways. What can we do to encourage people? Take ownership. Be responsible with the firearm. What else can we do? I found a lawsuit that took place in Indiana. A man left his pistol sitting on his seat in his truck. A young guy walked by a couple hours later, saw the pistol there, broke into the truck, stole the gun. A few hours later, his friend got killed. The family, the victim's family, obviously was devastated. They sued for carelessness, recklessness. They won in court. So I've come up with an idea that we would give civil immunity to someone who, when you have a firearm in your car, that you would lock it up. You would make sure it's not readily accessible to the public. If you do that and they break in your car and still break in the glove box, the trunk to get your firearm, you'll get civil immunity. And that's basically what this bill is.
And thank you for that explanation. Members, do you have any questions for Chairman Faison? Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Faison. I asked you this question before when we were talking about this bill. I appreciate your effort. My concern is that it takes probably less time to pry open a glove compartment and get a gun out of it, and it takes probably even less time to open up a trunk and get a gun out of it. And so I would like to have seen the immunity given to those who put a lock on their gun and lock it away. And because we're only talking about, a few more seconds after 3 seconds of getting into a car, another 3 seconds to open the glove compartment and get the gun out. And so that's my only concern about the bill. I'm still going to support the bill because, we need everything that we can do to make our families safer here in the state. But to me, it just doesn't go far enough.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Parkinson, I'm not going to disagree, but I would say this is working in conjunction with the overall that we're trying to achieve. And hopefully we get this involved with the PSA, with the Department of Safety, should that bill pass that Chairman White carried before me. And if it saves somebody, one death is too many. If this is potential that keeps a would-be burglar, when they don't see something, when they look in there with their flashlight and they don't see it sitting on the seat or just see it hanging out from underneath the seat, if this keeps that from happening, then we've done something. It's a step in the right direction.
Representative Parkinson, do you want a follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick follow-up. And again, I appreciate, your effort and what you're doing. I would venture to say that most guns that are being stolen out of cars are not sitting on the seat, and they're probably either under a seat or somewhere. And when we do this, I think that it's going to start directing, those would-be thieves that are looking for the guns to start going directly to the glove compartment, once they check from under the seat or the trunks. And so again, I'm going to vote for this bill because I think everything that we can do to help, would, even if it helped one person, would be awesome. So, but I just wanted to, lay out my concerns about it. Thank you again.
Thank you. Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Faison, for this. And I guess I wanted to reiterate something that you alluded to, and that is that, the victims in this situation are the lawful gun owners that are having their property stolen, just like anybody else that has property stolen. And the only reason, the main reason people would have to leave their firearms in their vehicles is because we need to do something about reducing the number of gun-free zones that we have. That is the cause of the problem. Our Second Amendment gives us the right to keep and bear arms, as you well know and you're very familiar with. And when that is restricted, folks have to leave them somewhere safe. And then a locked vehicle generally would be thought to be safe. But we have thieves that victimize these folks, and there are members here that would love to see those victims punished, and that shouldn't be done. So I appreciate you bringing this angle of it to remove any possible liability from those victims. Thank you.
Next on the list, I have Representative Powell. Sir, you're recognized.
I can't believe we have victims of homicide from guns, and we're talking about victims of stolen guns. Are you kidding me? This could go further. It should go further. But I can't believe that. We're talking about the victims of guns being stolen instead of the victims of gun deaths. My question for you is, what is the burden of proof? How is it proved? How does someone interpret or find out that truly the gun was safely stored? I mean, how is that determined? I mean, does the court determine that? Do you have to have a picture showing that you locked the gun? How is that, how does anyone arrive at that? Because my fear is someone's going to say, well, I locked it up, and they didn't. They just left it sitting there. Somebody broke in, and it's taken the word of somebody who was irresponsible to begin with to leave their gun sitting out. If you could address that, I'd appreciate it.
Chairman Faison, is that something you'd like to address?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Powell, obviously, according to this, you would have to prove that it was locked securely. Glove boxes broke, the trunk has been broken into, something like that. If you prove that in civil court, then you would get immunity.
Okay. Representative Powell, you're recognized.
Could we go out of session to have legal explain that if we could?
Members, any objection for that? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Fogarty, you're recognized.
Michelle Fogarty, Legal Services. That would be a question of fact for the fact finder, which would be the jury. If it was a jury trial, if it was a bench trial, that would be the judge. But each party would have to present their evidence, and then the jury would determine whether or not they believe, who they believed, what they believed, and weigh the evidence and make a factual determination.
Representative Powell.
Okay, well, again, that still gives me concern. How is that being?
Representative Powell, do you have any other questions?
No, I
while we're
don't.
out?
I'm
Just-
sorry,
And I'm
Mr.
going
Chairman.
to come back to you, don't worry. But members, do you have any other questions for Ms. Fogarty? Representative Bolso, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question, Ms. Fogarty, is simply this. Is it the case that in a civil jury trial, a plaintiff bears the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence the elements of a claim, but that a defendant bears the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence any affirmative defense that may be raised to a claim, such that a defendant who would raise this immunity would be the person in a civil jury trial who would bear the burden of proving that, in fact, that person qualifies for the defense of immunity because the gun was safely stored?
Ms. Fogarty?
That is correct. Yes, the plaintiff has the burden of proving the negligence claim and all the elements of negligence, the duty, the harm, the proximate cause, the actual cause. And then, yes, if you were the defendant, then it would be your burden to show that you had stored it properly in accordance with the statute.
Very good. Any additional questions for Ms. Fogarty before we go back into session? All right, seeing none. We're back in session. Representative Powell, you were wanting to ask a question, I believe, the sponsor.
No, I guess I just, hopefully the judge uses good discretion. I know today we had a judge here in Nashville that said that people are protected by the First Amendment and can bring their signs into this place. And they issued a restraining order against that rule. So thank you for judges who are wise interpreting what's right and what's wrong.
And thank you for that. Next on the list, we have Representative Gant.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Representative Bolso, he answered my question. Thank you.
Very good. Next on the list, I have Representative Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. And my colleague from Davidson County already asked the question kind of similar. So last year, I was at a community event that was held by Representative Parkinson. And our chief of police was there as well at that event. If you remember, I had to, when we left, my car was broken into at a event where the chief of police was at. And they ransacked it looking for, and obviously when the police got there, they did the fingerprinting and all that, and they asked about weapons and all that stuff. So if my gun 2 years later was involved in a murder or whatnot situation, what makes it to where me just saying that and the police taking record of that and saying, oh yeah, he said he locked it up, what actually holds me to that part to make sure that I don't have to actually and just in case I'm just using, I said 2 years, but what if it's, I'm gonna say one because of statute of limitations and all that other stuff. But if I don't remember that situation much about it, because I can't really tell you all the details of, I just know I walked outside, the windows were busted, the doors are open, and the glove compartment was open. So how do I defend myself as the person who had the gun and the gun was taken and then now it's been used later on?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Harris, I believe the gentleman from Wilson County explained it best when he said the preponderance of evidence would be, the burden of that proof would be on the plaintiff, and they would have to prove in the civil court to the judge or jury that your negligence is what led to the gun being stolen. So from my understanding, that's what would have to take place moving forward.
Representative Harris.
And I know that this bill also has been laid on the table in the Senate. So if you're bringing it back in January after it passes through here and goes through our regular process, if you bring it back in January, I'd love to be able to work with you on that part, because there's little pieces like that I guess we all just need to consider where a person is just basically just telling you, saying that they locked it up. Or I didn't lay it on the seat. I put it in the glove compartment and it got broken too. So we'd love to work with you on that.
Very good. And that's all the members I have on the list for questions. Are we ready to vote? Is there any objection to voting? Seeing none, looks like we're ready to vote to send House Bill 7054 to calendar and rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Bill moves on. Thank you, sir. And item 5, House Bill 7086. I'm going to roll it to the Hill of today's calendar without objection. Item 5, House Bill 7086 by Chairman Williams is rolled to the Hill of today's calendar. That brings us to item number 6, House Bill 7028 by Representative Gillespie. I do not see Representative Gillespie. Okay. Let's give him one moment, folks, and we'll. Chairman Grills.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can we roll him to the Hill?
We can. Members, any objection? Seeing none, House Bill 7028, item 6 on today's calendar by Representative Gillespie to the Hill of the calendar. That brings us now to item 7, House Bill 7064 by Chairman Todd.
Second.
You got a motion, you got a second. I'm also looking at an amendment 009556. Does that motion, you got a motion and a second on the amendment? Does the amendment does make a material change to the bill, or does it rewrite the bill?
I believe it rewrites the bill. Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go ahead and hear on the amendment.
Certainly.
And we can have questions on that, and then we can move forward from there.
Okay.
So you're recognized.
All right. Thank you, sir. What this bill does, it amends 3917, 1309 B and C, which currently bars carrying weapons of any kind at public school events and on public school grounds. This bill makes it possible for law-abiding off-duty or retired police officers, active duty or retired military, as well as enhanced carry permit holders to possess or carry a handgun on all public school properties and act as a true first responder when seconds literally count. As it relates to private schools, federal law only allows individuals with enhanced carry permits to carry in private schools subject to the policies of the individual schools. This doesn't change that requirement or the requirement for off-duty officers to inform the principal of those private schools when they're entering the property and are carrying. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
And thank you for that explanation. Members, Chairman Todd is open for questions. Excuse me, Representative Harris, you are first on the list, and I'll go to you, Representative Powell.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Sponsor, we passed some legislation around our SORs being in the school already. Are those not enough people as is with guns?
Chairman Todd?
Well, as you well know, there are a number of schools that where the local governments have chosen not to provide SROs, and this is certainly going to help fill that gap. But on top of the SROs, we have administrators in schools that are literally begging us for this ability. They have their enhanced carry permits, and they are begging us for this ability because they see these vulnerable children, and they want to add protection to them along with the SROs that are there. They plan to coordinate that. We've got retired officers that are asking us for this. We have current officers that are asking us for this, knowing they're about to retire, and they want to volunteer. They want to be a part of a school that may be in their neighborhood so that they can provide this no-cost security whatsoever. There's no cost to this at all. And those are the most trusted members of our community. So that's one of the reasons that we brought this. I'm not sure you could hear all that with the moaning and groaning going on, but I hope you could.
And I just remind folks, if we could, we're trying to have a conversation, and people sometimes can't hear. So if you could just kind of keep it down, would really appreciate that. Representative Harris, any follow-up?
Yeah, I got a couple questions then.
Go ahead.
So what if the administration does not want that on the campus? Is there something that stops them from being able to do that?
Chairman Todd?
There would not be. This would allow anyone with enhanced carry permit or those retired officers or off-duty officers in military to carry at any point, anywhere on the school properties or where school events are being held. As you know, that has been included. Those other locations have been included. So ball games, off-site events like field trips and things like that have also been very restrictive. And that's one thing that this is actually helping as well. For example, our building here, you're allowed to carry if you have, if you lawfully can carry, you can carry in this building. But if there was a school group that came here as a field trip, then anybody carrying in this building would automatically be committing a crime without even knowing it. If that group was meeting down the hall somewhere. So there's some catches in there that catch perfectly law-abiding citizens. And I don't think that's our purpose here, is to punish law-abiding citizens. It's to punish criminals and to prevent crimes. And so that's what this is about.
So, Representative, just one more. We have a long list already.
Well, can I ask just for just a
Sure.
second, if we can just dialogue back and forth for just a moment? Because I do have a couple questions, and I know we are rushing through this process a little bit, but I would like to ask a couple questions. He seems to be willing to answer them.
We'll take as much time as we need. I was just saying to be respectful of other members that have questions, but go ahead.
Yeah.
As long as y'all don't talk over one another, have 2 or 3 questions there, we can do that.
So there's nothing in place for the administrations of these schools to be able to say they don't want this to take place. And what if someone overreacts and jumps the gun before something even happens? And we've now allowed for more individuals to be in place on these campuses who aren't already prepared and trained. We have safety plans put in place for a reason that involves a lot of individuals who can make some of these decisions without actually having someone who can just randomly just come on campus with guns at this point. And the last part of that is, I know you mentioned something about military people being able to do it as well. I have a friend who was dishonorably discharged. I love him to death. Great guy, but he was dishonorably discharged from the military. Is he able to, based off of the way this is written, as it just says military, is there anything that stops someone who is dishonorably discharged from being able to be on the campuses? Not saying that he wouldn't be able to save people's lives or whatnot, but just being that he's dishonorably discharged without anyone knowing any further, is there anything that would hold him from being able to be on the campuses?
This bill covers retired military, and that is a whole different set of folks. If you're dishonorably discharged, you cannot be retired.
He is
I'm still answering your question.
I'll recognize you two. So
Okay.
Chairman Todd, you recognize.
Thank you, sir. This covers retired military and active duty only, not dishonorably discharged. And if I remember correctly, dishonorably discharged, I'm not even sure you can get an enhanced carry permit. So I don't think those individuals would be able to carry in these situations.
Representative Harris.
From my knowledge, he is retired, and I've been to awards ceremony things that he's been at where he's retired. But okay, so at the same point, will the administration not have any leeway? The LEAs, the Department of Education, no one will have any leeway to tell these people no, they can't be on the campuses. So there's no rules blocking them at all.
Chairman Todd.
For public schools, pre-K through 12, the answer would be no. Private schools have their own
God.
policies, and they can continue to have those own policies on their properties, but not the public schools.
Representative Harris.
They laid a lot of bills on the table in the Senate. I hate that they didn't do this one.
All right, next on the list, we have Representative Powell.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we suspend the rules to hear from the victims of the Covenant school shooting, the parents. I have 2 that would like to testify, Becky Hansen, Melissa Alexander.
And I have just, if you just withdraw that just for a moment, I do have a list of folks that are going to speak, and I was going to allow the members to have some back and forth. And I have 2 on the list that came into the office, and I don't mind. I don't think any member here minds hearing for some folks. How many folks were you proposing?
2, Becky Hansen and Melissa Alexander. They couldn't be seated in here, so they're outside the committee room. And I will withdraw them, Mr. Chairman, in good nature, knowing where you're on the committee. If you'll honor that. Thank you.
And we can do that without objection from the committee members. I don't think it would hurt hearing from 2 more people at some point in time. Let's go ahead and get through this list, and then we can hear from our folks that are here to testify. So I have Representative Bosso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Todd, I've got effectively 3 sets of questions for you. First, were you aware that in January of this year, the RAND Corporation published a comprehensive 427-page study, which, among other things, cited a report from the Crime Prevention Research Center establishing that from 1950 to the present, 94% of mass shootings have occurred in gun-free zones. And my second question on this part is, what is it that your bill does to address that concern?
Excuse me. Excuse me. Chairman Todd, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have heard those statistics, although I probably could not have articulated those as well as you have. They are certainly significant. And what this bill does, I think it does two primary things. One, the general public at this point in time, and I believe most legislators believed that private schools are just as prohibited from having anyone carrying on their property other than active duty law enforcement as public schools. And that is not the case. So that's something that in the research for this bill that I discovered is that private schools can set their own policy. By federal law, only enhanced carry permit holders can carry on private schools if you're not active duty law enforcement. And then someone off duty by our own law has to report to the principal when they enter the property and are carrying. So those are things that I think the public, I'm hoping this exposes that private schools can provide this level of security by having members of their staff possibly that have the enhanced carry permit, again, allowed by federal law to carry on those campuses and provide that added safety that I think most of us can see would be a common sense approach to protecting our children. And this then also extends a similar protection, but expands it to, again, more trusted, some of the most trusted members of our community, our law enforcement and trained military in good standing that would be able to provide those same duties, same volunteer services if they so choose. Obviously, they would be coordinating with administration and with any present SROs or any other security. If there was private security, they would coordinate that. That's just a common sense approach that's already being done in the public realm right now in other facilities. So it's being done now, and it would extend obviously to these facilities. So as a first line of defense, that's why we're being requested to have this ability for this group of people. And so I appreciate those questions.
My second question, Chairman Todd, is this. Are you aware that as of January 1 of 2021, there were 28 states in the United States that allowed, under certain programs, staff and teachers to defend the students by the use of firearms? And if so, does that give you additional comfort that your bill, in fact, has been vetted in 28 states over the entire country?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you. I was not aware of that many states. I knew I had some statistics that I know there was a reference to one state that someone gave me, and I don't have it with me, where since they enacted that, there have been absolutely 0 school shootings since that time. And so I know this is effective, and I know it makes people uncomfortable. I get that. I had a retired school teacher just recently where I was speaking after a series of questions by some other members of the audience of this group about this topic. And I explained how, at least from the information we have from this Covenant shooter, how decisions were made about the target. And this retired teacher stood up at the end and she said, "I have always been against any weapon being in school. You just changed my mind. I had no idea this is how they think." Criminals think a certain way, and for people to want to ignore how criminals think and pretend that they don't think that way is quite chilling to me, because it puts our children in jeopardy. I have kids and hope to have grandkids, and so I'm wanting to put in place things that will provide the protection that is real world protection, that is something that will eliminate. Because when a criminal knows that they're going to a situation where they're likely to be killed as soon as they get through the door, if they're trying to kill people, they're going to go to a different target. It happens. You never hear of a police station being shot up. And there's only one reason for that. It's not the uniform and it's not the badges. It's the guns on the other side of that door. They know their body count will not be very high, and theirs will be one of the first. That is the solution to this problem. As uncomfortable as it makes you feel, it is the real world solution. And that's why I bring this. It's uncomfortable, but for me to sit here knowing that there are folks here that would oppose that. But this is the true solution that we've not tried in this state, but all those other states have, and it is eliminating this problem.
And
Representative Bolso, any follow-up, sir?
just one final question, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Todd, I know that you're aware that in Section 49-6-816 of our code back in 2006, Tennessee adopted the Schools Against Violence in Education Act, or what's called the SAVE Act, that actually allowed distressed counties to adopt a policy to allow concealed permit holders to bring firearms onto campus to protect students. Are you aware of any adverse consequences of the General Assembly's enactment of the SAVE Act back in 2006?
Chairman Todd?
Thank you for that question. I am not aware of any incidents whatsoever and have heard from distressed counties in the past of how, especially the distance they are. Some of these schools are remote, and the distance they are from normal law enforcement presence is minutes matter, seconds matter, and we're talking about a lot of minutes for a response. So I think this has probably been a big deterrent in there being any incident in those counties. That I don't know of any incidents that have happened, and believe that it has truly acted as a deterrent, as it should.
Representative Parkinson, you're next on the list.
Mr. Chair, I was going to ask you, can you put me immediately on the list after we hear from the parents before they call the question on the bill?
Yeah, I can. I had Representative Capley had asked me to do the same thing, so you'll be number 2 on the list after testimony. Does that sound good? Is that what you want?
It is, but I'm hoping Representative Capley doesn't call the question before I get a chance to ask my questions.
You know what? I'll put you first.
Thank
How
you,
about
sir.
that?
Thank
To
you.
ensure that for you. All right. Members, I have next on the list, I have Chairman Jernigan.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand the arguments that are being made in the bill, and I've listened in both. Just because a person has an enhanced permit, and I've seen the course, doesn't really make them qualified to go against an active shooter. And yes, they're law abiding until the day that they're not. And when, and whether, you talk about arms in schools and people don't go there because they're armed. If you're mentally ill, they don't care. They're not interested in what's on the other side, how many guns are there. For me, and you mentioned the 28 states, and but zero of them have liability insurance because the insurance companies won't cover it. And that's what. So I do not think it's the right approach. There are many schools that have not had incidents and have not had guns in their schools as well. So I just I can't be in favor of the bill. Thank you.
Chairman Todd, any response?
The only response I guess I'm going to make about some previous comments that have been made. I have verified that part of our law states that anybody dishonorably discharged cannot get an enhanced carry permit. So that is already in place. So I did have that clarification. And this also does not require anyone to carry. It is only voluntary. It's totally up to individuals whether they choose to do that or not. And that's why I've had these requests from folks that want that ability, but they know they'll be violating the law. I also know of some schools where they have implemented this as a policy, sort of an internal policy, and have allowed it knowing that their folks could get prosecuted for carrying if we don't pass this. So there are schools that are already doing this. And that concerns me. I hate to put those people in jeopardy. And so that's another reason I brought this, because I know it's happening. I know they're wanting to protect these kids. And it's not bothering anybody. No, I've never seen an inanimate object jump up and hurt somebody. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. There is a person behind that, a bad person that has negative and evil intentions that causes these problems. And to couch this as most of some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle do quite often, as quote gun violence, an inanimate object violence, is absurd. And they're using that as to score political points for something that is an absolute falsehood.
All right, Representative Todd, thank you for that. That's noted. Members, I have Representative Harris on the list. He's the last member on the list. Before we get to our testimony, I'd really like to hear from these young people that are here. Oh, Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. If I'm not mistaken, we had multiple school shootings that have happened. And I know at least one of those school shootings where there were actual people who were educators in the school with guns on them. So if they couldn't do anything, what makes you think that someone who is outside the building, are these people going to be inside the building or outside the building? I guess that's one of the questions I have. I know this bill is, I did find out, just like you found out some information, I found out this bill is laid on the table in the Senate. So at least that's stopped for this session, but possibly. But to listen to my colleague on the other side, since we're going to do this, say that this is gun violence. We have a duty to do what we can to protect people. Insurance rates are going to go up for a lot of these schools because they are putting people at risk. That's what insurance is for, risk. And so if they increase the insurance on this, because they have this ability to do that, that's taking on an additional risk. And it is very ignorant for anyone to be able to think that a gun can't hurt someone, even though the person is behind that gun. Any objection?
No,
None.
no objection.
I'm done. Thank you, though.
Thank you, sir. All right. We've got some folks that are here to testify today. Want to get to them. Members, any objection going out of session hearing from the folks that are here to testify? See none. And I have 4 on the list. Probably could bring all 4 up here at the same time. As a matter of fact, we have plenty of seats in front. I have Kathy Barnett. Kathy. And then I have Helena Spicor. I'm sorry. And then I have Melissa Alexander and Rebecca Hansen. As members said, they may be outside. If they could come up, I'll see there. Okay. So if everybody could just come on up, there's plenty of seats there for y'all to. All right, ladies, if y'all wouldn't mind, just when it's your turn to speak, and we can just start over here and just work our way down this direction. Just be sure your red light's on, and then introduce yourself to the committee. And each of you will have 3 minutes to say whatever you want to say, and we'll have unlimited time for questions. Okay? So, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members. My name is Melissa Alexander, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my 10-year-old son. If I may, I would like to share with you, my son was a student at the Covenant School. He is still a student there because he's a survivor of the shooting that happened on March 27th. My son was on the 2nd floor that day, and I've met with many of you and I've shared this story, but I'd like to share it again for everybody else. That day, when the fire alarm went off, they started to evacuate and quickly pull back into the room. Immediately, they started to hear the gunshots all around their classroom. The first thing the teacher knew to do was to pull down the shade and lock the door. We had a Barracuda lock. Her hands were shaking so bad, she could not lock the door. Her hands were shaking so bad. I am a gun owner myself. I've been shooting guns most of my life. I, too, would have been shaking like our teacher. Our door was not secure, and it's only by God's blessing that that shooter walked right by our classroom, and you can see it in the footage. However, there was a shootout of 150 plus rounds on the second floor that day, which my son heard and smelled the gunpowder of. He knows what they are. He has 2 guns himself. He knew that he was about to die. One of the kids in the classroom grabbed the Bible and he started reading scripture because they knew they were next. One of the things our teacher had to do is tell them to be quiet, be quiet, because she knew the door wasn't locked. Don't say a word, shh. These kids knew they were going to die. And now they live. Thankfully, the police were so brave and obviously dissipated the situation and rescued our children. But now our children are survivors and they live with that trauma every single day. And what I'm telling you today is if we bring guns into school and we have shootouts like the one that happened at Covenant between teachers whose hands are shaking, who can barely steady a small handgun up against an assault rifle, all that's going to do is kill that teacher, put that teacher in danger, and then put the rest of that classroom in danger who they are trying to keep quiet. I'm begging you, surviving isn't the goal here. We want to prevent these shootings, and I'm begging you to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
And thank you for that, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members. My name is Rebecca Hansen. I have 2 children who attend the Covenant School. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and each of them. I have a 10-year-old daughter who was also in class on the 2nd floor. She was in the 4th grade at the time. And I have a 6-year-old son who was 5 at the time and downstairs in the pre-K. Upon 2 points I want to make. One is that we had armed representatives at the Covenant School. That was not a deterrent for the shooter. Expecting a handgun to go up against a semi-assault rifle that can expound multiple rounds within minutes is just going to add another death. It is unreasonable to expect us to be able to go against a small gun to go against that powerful of a weapon. The second thing I want to share is that similar to Melissa's child, both of my children, upon the fire drill, were exited out. I have not shared this yet, but my son was outside of the building. Our teacher had the wherewithal when she realized that what they thought they needed to do for a fire alarm was actually an active shooter, to turn it into a race, to not scare my 5-year-old, to get back into school and back into his safe place. In those precious moments, they had to run back in school, lock the door with the Barracuda bar and expound the shade, get into a hallway bathroom and keep those children quiet. The terror that they experienced is something that I hope no other family, no other child has to experience. There is no way that my sweet teacher could have also held and properly ejected a weapon. And it is unreasonable to ask even someone who has been trained to protect these children, to keep them quiet, to keep their hopes that they might live alive while they hear gunfire going all throughout the halls of their building, and to also carry and hold a weapon. I am begging you, on behalf of my children who are forever traumatized and will forever have to live with the trauma of being hunted at school, to please pass no on this bill.
And thank you, ma'am. You're recognized.
Good morning. My name is Helena Spigner, and I am studying at Vanderbilt University to educate tomorrow's generation. Today, I am representing the Tennessee chapter of Students Demand Action for Gun Sense in America in opposition of HB 7064, SB 7020. Today is my first day of my junior year, And instead of catching up with the people I missed over the summer and making a good impression on my professors and my new employer, I am here. As I enter my third year at Vanderbilt University, I am terrified to graduate. Not because I don't know what my next steps are, but because I have a very vivid picture of what they will be if you vote in support of HB 7064 and SB 7020. Instead of waking up every morning excited to teach my fourth graders, I will dread entering the classroom. As school shootings have become more frequent in America, my family has become less supportive of my goals. And every time one happens, I get a call asking to switch my major. And I tell them that it will be fine, but on March 27, 2023, our call sounded different. I was sitting in class when the ambulances left the Vanderbilt hospital and interrupted my professor. While we waited for them to pass, someone announced that there was a shooting at the Covenant School just down the street. Class was dismissed early, and we each walked quietly back to our dorms to process what had just happened. I called my mom, tears rushing down my face, and when she answered, I could tell that she already knew. That day, 6 lives were taken, and for the first time since I was a little girl, I did not want to teach anymore. Thankfully, I found the courage to continue pursuing my dream, but it will quickly become a nightmare if you fail to do the right thing today. I stand here asking you to oppose HB 7064 because most Tennesseans agree that the answer to gun violence epidemic is not more guns, it is more common sense. This bill is extreme. It means teachers, visitors, and staff can carry firearms in schools. If you vote for this bill, you are voting to put every child in this state at risk. To be a statistic, every gun that sits in a classroom presents a new opportunity. Every year, 140 innocent children and teens are buried because they're unintentionally shot. This number will only rise if we arm teachers. Do not prioritize guns over the lives of Tennesseans. Do not prioritize guns over the lives of our educators. And I am begging you, do not prioritize guns over the lives of your children. Thank you.
And thank you for that. Ms. Barnett?
Good morning. My name is Kathy Barnett, and I'm here in opposition to this bill. I want to thank the other testifiers. We are with you and we feel your pain. I'm a volunteer with Moms Demand Action, a resident of Franklin, a retired teacher, and a grandmother of 12. In response to the Covenant School shooting and the over 1,300 gun deaths of Tennesseans every year, that gives us the 12th highest gun death rate in the country. The Tennessee legislature is faced with two options: bowing down to the gun lobby and putting more guns in more places, or acknowledging the facts that putting more guns in more places actually endangers our children and communities. House Bill 7064 will do just that. It significantly adds to the mix of people already allowed to carry guns in Tennessee schools. It lets enhanced carry permit holders with only 8 hours of training bring loaded guns, firearms into schools. This bill makes it possible for schools to know who is carrying guns on the premises. Schools should be safe, trusting places where our children can learn and grow, free from fear. While there are certainly basic security measures like internally locking doors and access control that all schools should implement, measures that make our schools more like military bases do not create the nurturing and trusting environment that is conducive to learning. We know more guns in schools don't make children safer. In fact, it increases the chances that a gun will fall into the wrong hands or that a gun will discharge unintentionally and injure a student. House Bill 7064 introduces new risk of gun incidents in Tennessee schools instead of addressing the real problem of getting guns out of the hands of those that shouldn't have them. The Tennessee legislature was convened for this special session to solve a problem. This is only going to create another problem. And as a parent, I'd like to say, I have grandchildren in schools right now in public school. I would feel very uncomfortable knowing that any person that decided to wake up one morning and say, I think I'm going to go over to this school and be a vigilante today. I mean, and did you mention a limit? How many people are there going to be? Just 10, 12, 20? What? There's no end to this. Please do not vote for this bill.
All right, members, we've heard from our guests and appreciate all of you all being here today. First on the list, I have Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Representative, you can address any of these ladies you'd like and question them or ask whatever you want to do. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me speak to the mothers that had children at Covenant School. You absolutely matter to me. And I want you to know that. Your babies absolutely matter to me. And let me publicly apologize to you on behalf of the state of Tennessee for not protecting you and your babies, their teachers, and your babies' friends that were at Covenant School. Let me further apologize to all of the families who have lost loved ones due to gun violence in our state and due to the policies that come from this body that add to both the proliferation of guns in our communities and other unsafe practices. I also want to commend you for your courage, for standing up for your children and the other children across the state of Tennessee. I understand that I have never sat in your shoes. Let me be clear about that. And most of us have not. But I do understand the amount of trauma that you will have with you for the rest of your entire life. The amount of trauma that your babies will have with them for the rest of their entire lives. Their lives have been changed forever. Your life has been changed forever. And many of us here in this state, our lives have been changed forever from the acts that happened at Covenant School. So I just want you to know that without you, we can make no change. We absolutely need you here. We need you standing up. We need you saying what you're saying. We need you to continue to tell your story, continue to tell your baby's story in order for us to right the wrongs that we've done in the state of Tennessee that allow these violent acts to happen. So with that, again, I say thank you and I appreciate you and you absolutely matter to me. Thank you.
next on the list, I have Representative Capley. Representative, we're out of session at the moment, and then I'll put you on the list for when we go back in. Representative Harris, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. While you are here in this building, whenever you're until we as your representatives do what we need to do to protect you, your kids, your families, don't you accept not one more apology. I'm sorry. I'm praying for you. You're in my thoughts. Don't accept anything else from us until we as a state get together and actually do something to protect your families. It has already been rumored that we're going to potentially only pass a few bills. Not one of those bills affect what actually happened earlier in this year. And it is sad that we actually have to sit here in this room, in this large room with all these people. Not one person in here is saying, that in front of us is saying, no, they don't want better laws for our children, safer laws for our children, protection for our children. Not one single person. But if we pass, if this bill comes out of this committee, my God, it is saying to the state, to the people of the state, that we simply do not care. There's so many other words I want to use, but we simply do not care. I know there's going to be others that speak there. We just had someone just try to move on so we can actually vote on the bill That's sad. They don't even care.
Representative Harris, do you have any questions for the
What I will
ladies
say,
that are here?
my question is,
Okay.
do you as the people that are sitting in before us right now believe that we're going to complete anything for you today? That's my first question. My second question is, what is it that you need from us as your legislators to make sure that your children get through this school year without hearing about, seeing, or being involved in another school shooting?
And Representative Harrison, ladies, he just threw that out there and kind of laid it in front of you all. Would you like to ask any particular there to answer that, in particular lady to answer that question, or I'd like to hear what they have to say. Ms. Barnett.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen today. I would hope that our representatives would listen to us. I came from a Republican background, actually. I lived in East Tennessee. My father was Howard Baker's campaign manager. I grew up in that family and in a family that was staunch Republican. And I met Howard Baker, and I later, I was only a college student at the time, but he was in our home. And I grew to really admire him. I admired him because he went across the aisle, like the representatives here should be doing. I've seen it happen before. I've been coming down here for years, but very seldom. And in the case of gun control or gun safety, I don't see it at all. So I would hope that today you would listen to these people who are just heartfelt, that you would listen to them for once on this topic. It's important to the people of Tennessee and to all these parents, mothers, grandmothers, fathers, everybody sitting here. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Ms. Barnett. Next on the list, I have Representative Bolso. And we're still out of session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just a few questions for Ms. Barnett. And first of all, thank you very much for being here. Your participation is invaluable. I do have two questions for you. One, I represent part of Williamson County. And in Williamson County, we have obviously both public and private schools. We have private schools in my district that actually have armed staff to protect the teachers and the students. Is it your position that a private school that allows staff who is qualified and trained to be armed to protect students is making students less safe?
Ms. Barnett, you're recognized.
Well, I mean, we're not against SROs, but the evidence, the recent evidence, doesn't look good. You're 3 times more likely to have accidents happen in a school when they're SROs. I mean, I think the more we have, just like we've talked about this bill, the more chaotic it's going to be. I mean, we all know in mass shootings that don't happen that often, but they happen, and it happened here in Nashville. You know, it's just hard to be up against somebody with an AR-15. It's over in seconds. By the time somebody gets their gun and they knows it's happened, it's over. So I don't know. I can just say that I'm not against schools trying that or having that, and I know many do, but I have questions about it. Yes, I have doubts.
And I appreciate that, Ms. Barnett, but my question really didn't concern SROs because we actually have a shortage.
You're talking about teachers.
No, I'm talking about staff.
Staff.
My question was about, in this particular case, in this question, a private school having highly trained staff armed to protect students. You agree that that is a good thing, correct?
Ms. Barnett, you're recognized to answer the question if you feel comfortable.
I
If
don't-
not, you don't have to.
I don't believe teachers or staff should be armed.
Okay.
I think they have enough on their plate to keep the children safe. And it's just not something in their internal mind
okay.
that they're going, I mean, they've got to keep their children safe. That's number one.
Sure. And so in
Okay.
your position. if I
Representative
understand-
Bosso?
Yeah,
Here,
thank you,
let's
Mr.
let
Chairman.
Ms. Barnett finish. Go
Excuse
ahead.
me.
My
Finish your-
position is that teachers and staff should not be armed. That's it.
Okay.
So-
Representative Bosso, you recognize. You have another question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a two-part question.
Mhm.
So your position is that the principal and headmasters of those private schools that allow qualified staff to be armed are doing their students and their teachers a disservice. Is that correct?
You're
Ms.
putting,
Ms.
you're
Barnett,
making
you're
it,
recognized.
you're making it sound like, no, I mean, they're not doing them a disservice, but I think that accidents can happen with principals, with teachers. I don't know if the gun's going to be locked up. I mean, there are just many aspects to it. And I think that the best way you can serve the students is to keep the school where you can't get in the school and to have certain protocol that you go by when there is an active shooter and that sort of thing. There's many other things.
Very good. Anything else, Representative Bosso?
My final question, Mr. Chairman, is this. You told us earlier.
Let's have order, please. We're trying to have a conversation.
Yeah, I know.
We,
Ms. Barnett, you told us earlier in your testimony, quote, "We know more guns do not make students safer." My
That's true.
question simply is, can you tell me what study or data you rely upon for the truth of that statement?
You
Ms.
know,
Barnett, you're recognized.
we get information research from every town and they get it from the CDC, from all kinds of organizations. You just have to, I mean, you could go online to Mr. Google and look it up.
All right.
Isn't
All right.
isn't the truth of it, Ms. Barnett, that
Hey, Representative Bosso, we're gonna move on. This is not productive. Without objection, we're going to go back into session.
No objection.
What's your objection? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I was the one that requested some of these folks to come up here, and I would like to have the opportunity, and I did that in good faith. I withdrew my thing. If I could just ask one question.
You did. My concern is the crowd and the folks we have here are not allowing us to conduct this meeting. And I'm trying to have a conversation. So if folks would just please just allow us to have a conversation.
If one person acts out, as you call it, during my comments, then I will stop my commentary.
Thank you. Yeah, members, without objection, let's go back out of session. Representative Powell, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I just ask everyone in the audience to please be respectful. If I could address this, the moms of Covenant. You know, I know Uvalde, armed presence, 21 dead. Parkland, armed presence, 17 dead. You talked about Covenant, 6 dead. Your testimony was extremely powerful, and I can't thank you enough for being here. I can't thank you enough. This hits very close to home for me. I literally am the father of a 9-year-old boy. My son's school is at Glendale Elementary. It's basically in the same community, same area as Covenant. When this shooting unfolded, I wondered from office in Green Hills if that was at my son's school. I feel a sense of grief. I feel a sense of shame. I feel a sense of guilt when I learned that it wasn't at my son's school. And I knew that he was going to come home to me, God willing, that night. And I could hold both of my children in my arms once again. I know how it probably was very difficult for you to watch this. And this is my question. But I can't commend the Metro Nashville public school officers enough who literally put aside their own lives and regard for their own safety to enter that school building. In moments, they responded quickly. And I've watched that video, and I've seen how terrifying it is inside that school, and seeing the way those officers responded. And you can hear the gunfire go off in the background and hear how powerful those weapons of war are. And my question for you is, do you think that anything in this bill is going to help protect the children of this state and the children of your school against people who enter with literally weapons and guns that were designed for soldiers in the battlefield and not people in our civil society? Can you please address that?
All right, Representative Powell, do we want to have, who would you like to address
If I
it?
could
I'm
have
just
both
curious. So we'd have,
mothers answer that, please. And
Okay.
that's my only question. I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, fair enough, and thank you for that. So ladies, whoever's going to address that, just introduce yourselves once again and just address the question. Please.
Yes, Rebecca Hansen, mother of 2 Covenant children there that day. No, sir, I do not. The officers who went in, if you've seen the videos, were very well coordinated. There were distraction tactics, there were teams, there were multiple officers. Not only did they have extensive training, but what we have been told is that the way that they operated took quite literally an act of God for them to follow that training as perfectly and flawlessly as they did. And that there are many officers in the battlefield, in the streets, who in similar circumstances would not have been able to operate in that way. And again, I want to emphasize that there were many of them. There were many more on the way. There was someone outside the building who was coordinating with the teacher who knew the layout of the building. Our school had been very well trained. They knew exactly north, south, east, and west. They were able to identify and say exactly where from a north, south, east, and west they should be going based on the shooter's location. It took a very well-trained staff and a very well-trained, well-coordinated, incredible effort by the MNPD to do what they did. In addition to God, and I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, coming into each of the Holy Spirit came into each of them that day and allowed them to execute flawlessly. I do not believe that by putting a simple weapon, a couple of people without all of that extra, it took all of that extra for this shooter to be taken down in 14 minutes. It is unreasonable to expect that that would happen, that level of training, that level of coordination would happen by folks who are armed within a building without all of that extra. So no, I do not believe that anything in this bill will further protect our children.
And thank you for that. You recognize it.
Thank you. I would like to address the question that Representative Harris posed earlier about what we would like you guys to do. And I would like you guys to all look me in the eyes when I say this, and please remember my face because I will keep coming back. We would like extreme risk laws passed. We would like actual enforceable storage laws passed, please, and thank you.
And thank you for that. All right, members, any additional questions? Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Rebecca, and the other man, I don't remember your name.
Melissa.
Melissa, thank you all for being here. And I don't know what it's like to have to deal with what y'all had to deal with over the past few months. And I hate that for you. But I do thank y'all for coming up here and just giving us perspective and sharing information. You said something that I did not know or recognize or remember if I did hear it. You said that there was a actual police officer there in the building that day. In your testimony earlier?
No, there was not a police officer. There was an armed staff person.
Okay, there was an armed staff person okay, if it's okay with you?
If she can't answer, you can ask her. She may not be able to know or may not answer
Do you
the
know
question.
how did that work there in that school with the armed
I don't know the specifics. The point that I was trying to make earlier is that the fact that there was an armed staff person did not deter the shooter from entering the building and inflicting trauma upon my children.
Do you have any idea where that person was located in the building?
And that may, you know, Representative Grills, let's just hold right there.
Okay.
I'm sure that there's an active investigation here. Things are
That's
still
fair enough.
going on. Let's just kind of
Yeah, I'm
hold
just
on
curious.
those
Thank you.
types of questions.
And once again, I really appreciate you coming and the decorum that y'all shown. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all I have on our list for our speakers. I appreciate, oh, excuse me, Representative Parson. This is.
Thank you. And,
Go back
and
to session.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to Kathy, right? I'm not an attorney, so I will not attorney you.
Good. Not
Right.
either.
And so the, you know, because I thought it was unfair how the questions were asked to you. And but let's simplify this. Let's simplify it. Is it safe to say that you want root preventive measures, policies coming from this body that would prevent you having to ask a teacher to be armed?
Yes, of course. Extreme risk protection order would have been the best, but that was shut down, as we know.
So extreme risk protection orders,
Yes.
universal background checks.
Yes.
Getting rid of permitless carry, you know, those
Exactly.
things that would prevent us from having to arm teachers. Is that- I didn't want to put the words in your mouth, but I did want to come to your aid a little bit to,
Oh, yeah.
to assist. So, but thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks, Chair. All right. Thank you, Representative Parkinson. Members of the objection will go back in session. Now, remember, we're on the amendment still. We haven't voted on it. As I understood it, it rewrote this bill and made material changes. So that's what we've been discussing. So do we have any? All right. And that's appropriate. We haven't taken a vote yet. So it's recognized and we'll take a roll call vote without objection. We'll take a roll call vote. Okay. All right, members, are we ready to vote? Oh, yeah, I did. Okay. I had told Representative Parson, I'll call him before we came back in. So Representative Parson, you're recognized on the amendment, then we're going to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, because I had some questions for the sponsor. But I do want to say this before I ask this question. You know, just because a person has an enhanced carry permit does not mean that they can actually shoot. And so let's be clear on that. And to the sponsor, do the individuals that are allowed on the campus, you know, enhanced carry permit holders or others, do they have to notify the district at all? I'm sorry, do they have to notify the district at all that they will be able to act under this law?
Chairman Todd, do you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under current law, nor under this change are we requiring any kind of notification. But as I said earlier, that is a common sense, normal thing that would take place if it's someone that works there. You know, if someone is just volunteering in the carpool line, possibly, I would think our law enforcement officers would want to do that, would expect to do that as just part of their normal training. And so I would think it would be encouraged, but there's nothing in here that requires that.
Thank you. Representative Parson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you know, my other concern about this bill, and I mentioned this in subcommittee also, is that this bill, it literally, because there is language in this bill that speaks to emergency response. And so this bill almost deputizes almost every single individual that comes onto the campus. And that's a huge concern of mine. And you know, and so that's another reason why, among many, why I'm not going to be able to support this bill. And Mr. Chair, thank you for your indulgence. I truly appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And Chairman Todd, you recognize for any follow-up?
Well, there's nothing in this bill that addresses emergency response.
Okay, fair enough. Members, looks like we have exhausted the list. We're ready to vote. Seeing no objection. Madam Clerk, would you go ahead and take the vote on House Amendment 009556?
Representatives Bricken. Bricken votes aye. Bolso.
Aye.
Bolso votes aye. Capley. Capley votes aye. Eldridge. Eldridge votes aye. Gant. Gant votes aye. Garrett. Garrett votes aye. Grills. Grills votes aye. Harris.
No.
Harris votes no. Hill. Hill votes aye. Lamberth. Littleton. Littleton votes aye. Parkinson.
Absolutely no.
Parkinson votes no. Powell.
No.
Powell votes no. Russell. Russell votes aye. Stevens. Stevens votes aye. Todd. Todd votes aye. Vice Chairman Jernigan. Jernigan votes no. Chairman Farmer. Chairman Farmer votes aye. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 ayes and 4 noes.
All right, the amendment is adopted. Now the amendment's on House Bill 7064. Question's been called. Looks like we're ready to vote on House Bill 7064 as amended. Madam Clerk, if you would take the vote.
Representatives Bricken. Bricken votes aye. Bolso.
Aye.
Bolso votes aye. Capley. Capley votes aye. Eldridge. Eldridge votes aye. Gant. Gant votes aye. Garrett. Garrett votes aye. Grills. Grills votes aye. Harris. Harris votes no. Hill. Hill votes aye. Lamberth. Littleton. Littleton votes aye. Parkinson. Parkinson votes no. Powell.
No.
Powell votes no. Russell. Russell votes aye. Stevens. Stephen votes aye. Todd. Todd votes aye. Vice Chairman Jernigan. Jernigan votes no. Chairman Farmer. Chairman Farmer votes aye. Mr. Chairman, you have 13 ayes and 4 noes.
Bill passes. It's moving on to Education and Administration. With that said, Representative Bolso, we're on item 8, House Bill 7005. I got a motion and second on the bill. Representative Bolso, you're recognized. Representative Bolso, you're recognized. Without objection, we'll take a brief recess. Mr. Sergeant at Arms, will you ask that the folks move on, please? Hey, Mr. Sergeant Arm, we need help clear. We'll need the room. We'll need these folks to move out. We've got to finish committee. All right, we're back in session. We've got a motion and a second on Item 8, House Bill 7005. Representative Bolso, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill that does just one thing. It actually expands 49-50-803 from allowing private K through 12 schools to develop their own firearms policy to pre-K through 12 private schools to develop their own firearms policy. Under the existing statute, if you've got a private school that has only grades between kindergarten and 12, that private school is allowed to adopt its own firearms policy. Shortly after the Covenant shooting on March 27, one of the private schools in Williamson County, in my district, asked me to work to expand this statute from K through 12 to pre-K through 12 because the Department of Education took the position that the statute did not allow that school to adopt its own firearms policy because it was a pre-K through 12 school versus a K through 12 school. And all that this bill does is move private schools from K through 12 to private schools pre-K through 12 to adopt their own firearms policy. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would urge its passage.
If members have any questions for Representative Bolso? Representative Powell, you recognize, sir.
Thank you. I guess I was just going to make the same request that we do a roll call vote, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection. So I see objection on the roll call. I just asked members just to withdraw that. Okay. Let's just, all right. Are we ready to vote? Any more questions before we vote? Seeing none. Looks like we're ready to vote. House Bill 7005. Moving on to Education Administration. All those in favor? Excuse me. Madam Clerk, go ahead and take the vote.
Representatives Bricken. Yes. Bricken votes aye. Bolso.
Aye.
Bolso votes aye. Capley. Yes. Capley votes aye. Eldridge. Eldridge votes aye. Gant. Gant votes aye. Garrett. Garrett votes aye. Grills. Grills votes aye. Harris. Hill. Hill votes aye. Lamberth. Littleton. Littleton votes aye. Parkinson. Powell.
No.
Powell votes no. Russell. Russell votes aye. Stevens. Stevens votes aye. Todd. Todd votes aye. Vice Chairman Jernigan. Jernigan votes no. Chairman Farmer. Chairman Farmer votes aye.
And thank you, Madam Clerk. Bill received the majority of the votes and is be moving on to Education Administration.
We'll still stay in. We got more fight to fight.
All right, I've got a couple announcements, one announcement on the calendar. Item 6 that was previously rolled to the Hill of today's calendar, that's House Bill 7028 by Representative Gillespie. That's asked to be taken off notice. So without objection, House Bill 7028 is off notice. And we kind of had moved through the calendar in other ways as well. This brings us back to item number 5, which is House Bill 7086 by Chairman Williams. That's the item we're on now, and that's got a motion and a second. Sir, and I don't see an amendment here, so you're properly recognized.
Yes, sir. Chairman members, thank you. House Bill 7086 is a bill that this committee has seen before. Earlier this year in session, this bill was presented before this committee. What this bill would do, if adopted by the House and the Senate, what this bill would do would allow for those faculty and staff members of K-12 education schools the ability at their own permission to carry on campuses as long as they have done the following. 1, they'd have to have an enhanced carry permit. 2, they'd have to present themselves for a psychological evaluation with the same law enforcement agency that holds the memo of understanding with the school system that provides security for that school system. Secondly, or next, that person would have to train with and complete 40 hours of active shooter training with the law enforcement agency that does in fact provide security to the school system. Giving those parameters, the law enforcement agency, even after all those are met, still has the ability to determine whether or not that person can provide for security. If you remember, this body back in 2016 passed a campus carry bill, which allowed someone to carry their firearm with an enhanced, what would be equivalent to an enhanced carry permit on higher education campuses. In 2017, the TBI campus crime report reported that overall crime was down 26%. About 3.3% of faculty and staff across the institutions of higher learning across our state actually utilize this by notifying their law enforcement agency of record for each of those entities. And they have seen an overall decrease in crime. The thing that this bill does that we've discussed prior to this committee meeting and previously in the year is what this bill does. It creates something that is very valuable to our K-12 campuses across the state, and that is a deterrent. As many of you may know, we're here today because of a shooting that could have been worse if it weren't for deterrence that we were told by Director Roush with the TBI. The point is, if we can create a deterrent by being able to put a sign out front of a door, we know that if only 3.3% of people in higher education campuses carry, which is what the data shows, that there will be very few people who are willing to do this. However, in every K-12 campus across the state, we'll be able to install a sign that says, under Tennessee Code Annotated 49-6-815 as amended, that sign could say that there may be someone else in this campus and on this campus that is carrying a firearm other than the SRO. As we know, deterrents are some of the greatest things we have left to do. We can pass laws which legislate all kinds of things, but we can't change the hearts of the people who create these terrible acts or crimes. As many of you know, I have 2 kids in a public school that have now graduated. And as a parent of kids who are in public schools in my community, I'm comfortable with, because of all the parameters that this bill lays out before me, I'm comfortable that this will, in fact, create a deterrent and keep what would be my children if they weren't graduated safer in Tennessee. I know this committee has been through a lot as it relates to not just this bill, but the subject matter. As you also know, we had this bill before us, and it currently lays on the desk in the House of Representatives. And because of the shooting last year, we laid it on the desk, and the Senate did not take that bill up because of the changes that they had in the Senate. Because of that, and because the Senate's not moving, Mr. Chairman, members, I know some of you did disappointed in what I'm fixing to say, but I would ask this bill be taken off notice.
Is that? And that completes today's calendar. I appreciate everyone being here. Members, without objection, we're going to, Chairman Grills?
Chairman, I just want to say that you did a fantastic job today of handling the emotion and keeping order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, without objection, we're adjourned, subject called chair.